Welcome to Diary of a Queen. I'm your host, Danielle Martin, and I'm joined by somebody very special today, Chelsea Clark from Wilmington, North Carolina. Hi,
Hi, Danielle. Thanks for having me on.
I am so excited to see you. People that have been watching this show for a while have heard me do this spiel, but I had an original list of about 25 people that I really wanted to have on, and you were one of my top three.
Oh, well, we've only known each other for, I'm not even going to say how many years. We
I
were
was
two.
yeah, we were 2 years old and we've known each other for 10 years.
Right, exactly.
But there's so many things in your life. So for those of you that are watching right now, Chelsea Cooley was crowned, Cooley's her maiden name. She was crowned in 2005 Miss USA, top 10 at Miss Universe. And that probably goes without saying for those that are watching the show. And I love those things about you. I think it's fantastic. But I love all the things that you've done up until now. You've had so many things in your life. And one of the things that I find so great about you is you're a yes girl. I love me a yes girl. Like, do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to try this? Yes. And I love that about you because it proves something that we talk about on this show all the time is you can do anything that you put your mind to. And we're talking about we've been in a band. We've started multiple businesses that have been super successful, public speaking, all kinds of things, and now an author. So I want to talk about a couple of things because the people that watch this show, that you never know what is that one thing that they're going to grab onto. And as women, we need to be a tight community, right? We need to uplift each other and empower one another. And the best way to do that is by telling our stories. So as one of my favorite yes girls, tell me all your different transitions in life. What makes you go, I'm gonna do that? That's the thing I want to do.
It's funny. I actually had a conversation earlier today with someone, and we were talking about just the concept. She's always been in business for herself. I've always been an entrepreneur. And I think I've known since a very early age. I mean, we're talking like second grade. I remember doing one of those like social studies projects about entrepreneurship. And I was like, wow, that looks really great. And I never have been able to see myself sitting behind a desk in a 16 by 16 cubicle where like I always I always saw something so much bigger and so much more different than that. And even as a child, I didn't know that that would look like Miss USA. As I started doing pageants when I was a teenager, when you and I first met, that's when I really started to see a bigger picture of that. But Miss USA is a 1 year opportunity. It is not a career. It's not a job. It's just a great springboard. And so from there, I became an entrepreneur, and I've always wanted to capitalize on the networking and the connections that I've made over the years, and really wanting to utilize just all of the things and the people that God put in my path along the way. So I'm such a big thinker and a big dreamer, and you have to be a big doer when you have that type of thought process, because that's really how you're going to walk that out. And sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. But read behind any great entrepreneur, and it's the 99 things that didn't work that got you to the one big thing that did work. And so I'm just not afraid to go for it. And when I get an idea, I'm like, okay, well, let's run with it and let's try it. And I think that's really what has positioned me along the business path that I've been on my adult life.
And you touched on something that I think is really great. You can't, and I'm going to redefine this too, hopefully. You can't be afraid to fail.
Right.
And I have now, people will ask me, tell me a time that you failed. Tell me a time that you failed. I'm like, I've never failed. And I truly believe that. Now, when I was younger, if you had asked me that, I would have told you a whole bunch of things that I didn't win, didn't succeed in the way that I wanted to. But it changed my mindset where the word fail was eliminated. I learned something. I always learn something, but I've never failed. I've instead just learned. When I changed that, it made me more eager to be a yes person too. Because you're right, you have to try so many things until you land on whatever that is that's going to be your path and your journey. And it can be a lot of things. So you're going to learn a lot before you land on that, on that one thing. And you may land on a whole bunch of things that work, but you decide to evolve. And as women, I think we're so great at doing that. So another thing that is super interesting about Miss Clark is she is a mother of six, y'all. Six children. Okay. I got three children, and sometimes I think my head is going to spin. So tell me about family life and how that's working out for you right now.
Yeah, so I got remarried about 7 months ago, and we are a beautifully blended family with 6 amazing children. We've got the bigs and the littles, so we've got 3 in middle school and 3 in elementary school. 5 of the 6 play sports, my 2 play multiple sports, and my daughter, who just turned 13, is by far the busiest kid on the planet because she does everything, she plays everything, and I have no idea where she gets that from, but it's an amazing season of life to be in because I'm going to blink and she's going to be going to college on a full athletic and academic ride because I just know that's her path. And so I don't mind the craziness of it. I don't mind having to figure out the schedule and going from here to there. And I don't mind it at all. And I find that, I don't really want to complain about it because there's nothing to complain about. It is going to like literally, I blinked and she turned 13. My son is about to turn 8. uh, it is such a fleeting and beautiful moment because I've always been of the mindset as a mother that I am not raising children, I'm raising adults. And so the things that I get to pour into my children now, all 6 of my amazing children, it is the most formidable time in their life that my husband and I can pour into them who God has created them to be, what the expectations are in this household. I can't control what happens outside of the 4 walls of this house, but I can control the type of love that we pour into them, the discipline, the expectations, and how we can help shape who they will hopefully become as adults. Because we've got 4 boys and 2 girls. So there's 4 future husbands, 2 future wives. It is a generational impact. And I think as a parent, that is one of the most important roles that you have. So I love this season. I love being on the go. I've always loved being on the go anyways, but I don't want to miss one single second. So having 6 kids, we just make it work. We make it work and we meet in the middle in between all the craziness.
You're right. It's tough. I've been often asked what my I'm so blessed and so honored that people want to open up for 20 to 30 minutes and share their lives with me. Very personal stories, very impactful, and sometimes things that are, very traumatic. But I'm always asked, what is the episode that has affected me the most? And it was one that was very early on, just because it was something that related to me. And I'm sure it'll be something that'll relate to you. But the entire episode was about her being an empty nester and that
Mhm.
season of life. And she was begging, imploring, please don't wish this time away
Yeah.
because it's so fleeting and everything is different. Christmas morning's different, Easter's different. Everything is different. And during that episode, I was pinching my leg, trying to keep from crying because how she was explaining. And I know it's years away for me, and it's years away for you as well. But we know that those years are seconds. They goes by so fast. So to hear that from somebody that has multiple children, I think it's really important for people to understand, we see you, we know you're busy, we know you're exhausted, but enjoy it because there's so few things in life that you can grasp onto and really hold tight to like this time in your life. So I appreciate you saying that. And I know a big part of your life is faith, and
Mhm.
you had brought that up and touched on that. I'd love for you to, it's one of my favorite things about you, about how strong your faith is and how willing you are to share your faith with other people. I would love for you to touch on your faith and how that journey has played out for you.
I grew up kind of in and out of the church. My parents divorced when I was a year and a half. And so a lot of what I grew up in, it really caused me to really push away from God. And there were people in my life, close family members that were Christian, but the actions and things that were happening were not indicative of that. And I thought, well, if that's the God they serve, I really don't want any part of that. And so I always felt like there was something there, but I did not really fully grasp it. And so it wasn't until February of 2008, which is, almost 3 years after winning Miss USA, that my business partner at the time, he and his wife sat me down and we just talked. And he had talked a lot about like being born again and being saved. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice. I had no idea what he was talking about. But it was that night that they just shared so much love with me that I gave my life to Christ. And then from there, it's so interesting because I was like, great, I'm not going to hell. I'm going to heaven. It's awesome. But I also didn't know what it meant to have a relationship with God. And it wasn't until about 9 years ago that I had joined Mary Kay under a very close family friend, and I knew her walk with the Lord was really solid. She is one of my very best friends, and I knew that the life struggles that she had gone through. And when we would get together and she would pray and just things, I was like, I don't know what she has, but I want that. And that's just where I started to really dive very deep in my relationship with God and just really being hungry and seeking after him. And that didn't come without a lot of what you hear people say, like spiritual warfare. I mean, I've walked through a lot of seasons of life in the past 9 years, from having my son to walking through a very painful divorce to being a single mom to remarrying and now having 6 amazing children. There's been so many different things. And my healing is in direct proportion with my relationship with the Lord and my willingness to want to tap into that with him and practically begging him to reveal himself to me. And as he has done that and continues to do that time and time again, it has just blown my mind, this all encompassing love that my human mind cannot completely wrap my brain around, but it has just forever changed my life. And so I am who I am today because of that relationship with Jesus. And I am beyond thankful. Even, I just had my 18-year anniversary of winning Miss USA, which makes me feel so very old. And I look back on what I call baby Chelsea, and I'm like, oh, look at baby Chelsea with her little baby eyebrows, because eyebrows weren't in it back then. And and I'm like, I look at that girl and all of these components, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know that girl anymore, because of what I've been through and what God has walked me through. And so, it is the foundation of my life, and it is my life's mission and passion to pour that into my children so that they don't struggle with identity, and really and truly into the women and men that I get to mentor through Mary Kay and through my public speaking and through these books and all this stuff. That has really become the focal point of my life's purpose, because it was the thing that I struggled the greatest with.
And there's a great joy and peace in knowing that you are not in control. And I know that that's a hard thing for people to grasp, because it we want to feel like we are so in control, and that giving up, and it just is, it's such a great and peaceful feeling. So for you it was I think you said 2008. For me it
Mhm.
was 2009, June of 2009. And I was going through a really really tough time in my marriage, and I met a gentleman. And I always think it's funny, the people that were sent, right? It was the last person I would have expected. And I met this gentleman, and we talked about all kinds of different things. And woe is me, I'm in such a bad place. And he was like, you're going to learn the most during this time. you're not going to recognize it now, but in the future, you're going to recognize it. And you learn the best things and become a better person through the struggles, and faith becomes stronger, and your release of control can become stronger. You just have to give in to that. And I think sometimes human nature doesn't always allow us to do that. But I love what you said. You know, walking through a journey of faith isn't always easy, but it's something that is so fulfilling on the other side of it.
I was in my quiet time this morning with the Lord, and he was just showing me different things in First Peter, um and it talked about when your faith has an end on the day of your salvation. I was like, faith is on a timeline. It's the first time I'd ever noticed that. And time is a gift from God, because time doesn't necessarily operate like that in the way that God works, let's put it that way. But in earth, we have this gift of space and time. And when I read that, I was like, okay, so, because sometimes we, especially as women, we can be really hard on ourselves. And it's like, oh, I doubted this and I didn't have enough faith for that. And when I read that, I was like, faith is on a timeline as well. Faith is like a muscle that you exercise and you work out. You hear people talk about that all the time. But what does that really mean? It means that you're gonna screw up. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna feel like you're falling short. There's gonna be times when you doubt things, when you struggle with control. But your faith it is not a one and done of how you exercise. It is on this journey of time that you've been gifted from the Lord. And it's okay to work and walk that thing out as you're going through things.
I agree fully. And this is a beautiful segue to talk about your journal, Authentically Loved.
Mhm.
This is there's two versions. There's one for us adult gals and one for teens as well. And I'm so thankful that you've done something for teens. We're going to talk a little bit more about this journal and what this looks like. But I just started recently a teen version of Diary of a Queen for that perfect reason of a lot of the stuff that happens to us as younger people, as younger women, especially, if I say all the time, I wish I could have had somebody that mentored me at a
Mhm.
younger age. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't have slipped and fallen and I wouldn't have gone through some of the things that I've gone through, but I would have loved for that advice. As a matter of fact, as a teen, I probably craved it and didn't even know that I did. But it certainly would have been nice to help maybe push me along in certain directions. And that we tend to try to fix what's already broken as opposed to try to help steer along so that maybe we don't get to that place where we're already broken and it's very difficult to fix. So I love that you did a teen version as well. I want you to talk a little bit about this journey with starting this journal, how it came about, and you know what some of the reviews and things like that people are coming back to you and talking about. So if you can talk to us a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure. I know I pulled these to show. So the teen one is more of like a pink background. This is the first one that we launched. And then there was an immediate need to launch the women's journal afterwards. So Chesley Christ, my Miss USA sister, tragically passed away a little over a year ago. And, she was a great friend. She was my Miss USA sister. She was also from North Carolina as well. And, you know, none of us, with the exception of her mother, knew about what she was struggling with. And so, you know, I know how wonderful it is to be Miss USA. And I also know how lonely it can be to be Miss USA. And then you add, Chesley's past struggles with depression and the fact that she was the COVID queen. I mean, she was the longest running Miss USA and completely isolated in that. I mean, it's just, there's so many components to it, right? And so to think about where she had to be mentally and emotionally, it just wrecked me. And I knew after that that God was calling me to basically create the tools that I had used to walk through some of the darkest times in my life. And so that February, I created Authentically Loved, but I did not do anything with it because it wasn't time to do anything with it yet. So I waited on the Lord for him to give me the go ahead to create these journals. And it was probably, I don't know, October-ish, November-ish last year. I don't even remember. And he said, go. And I had the teen journal done in 3 hours. And there's little excerpts in there that God was giving me to share. And so I self-published it because I wanted to get it out as fast as possible. I had gone down the route before of, working with a Simon and Schuster agency in New York and ghostwriters and all that stuff. And it's a very long and lengthy process. And I didn't want anyone to take away from what God was giving me. So I just did it all. I just figured it out. We're women. We can figure things out. So I figured it out and we launched it. And I mean, it just exploded. And the feedback was unbelievable. I thought, well, if maybe just one person buys it, that's fine. I wasn't doing it to make money. I was doing it because God told me to do it. But I was getting so much feedback from my girlfriends that are our age that were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. My daughter is struggling with this and I'm struggling with that. I was like, I've got to do one for women. So a week later, I put the women's journal out, and I have had friends from all over the country that are like, I want 100 for my church, and I want this to put in my store, and I want this to, and that. And, journaling doesn't always come naturally to people. And even my daughters are like, so what do I do with it? And I was like, well, you can use it to take notes while you're in church. And if you're going through something, then, and you don't, you're not sure how you want to talk to me about it, just put it in your journal. I'm not going to read it. You have to have an outlet for your emotions. And so just kind of teaching them how to grab a hold of their emotions, because emotions should not control you, because then they become an idol. That's a whole nother series for another day. But having said all of that, it's, I probably have over 50 journals that I have taken the time to pour into. And I will just quickly speak on this exercise, because what happens when you're walking through a healing journey and you're going through things, and it can be good, bad, or indifferent. I love King David in the Bible. He was not perfect. He was a murderer. He was an adulterer. He had a lot of issues, but he was after God's own heart. And what does that mean? You can go back and read so many of the Psalms. He didn't write all of them, but he wrote a lot of them. And he pours everything out to God. And it is not, thou art, I love you. Like it is, I am so frustrated and I'm so angry and everybody is encamped around me. And where are you, God? And why is this happening to me? I mean, he's just pouring it all out. And when you read some of those Psalms, you can see him pouring it out. And then like the next verse, you see it completely shift to gratitude. Lord, thank you so much. And I do give you honor and praise. And you are the most high God. And it's almost like you can see God enter in to that space. And so I started developing this habit of, no matter what I was dealing with, good, bad, or indifferent, mostly during these painful times in my life, it was a lot of the stress of what I was dealing with. And I would pour it out, pour everything out on the paper. And there's something that happens physically and spiritually when you pull it from here and you put it on paper and you are physically above it. You are now putting it underneath you. And I would write everything out, and then I would pause. And in my OCD self, I get another pen color because, I gotta, like, I'm so OCD like that. And I would go, okay, God, what do you say about it? And I would literally wait on him to speak, because if he was speaking in the Bible, he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He will speak to you. And people are like, oh, I wish I could have these encounters with God like you do. I'm like, you can. I'm nothing special or the exception. No, it's for anyone who seeks him. And so sometimes that answer and I would hear him speak within 15 minutes. And sometimes I'd wait on him for 4 hours, but I would not move until I heard from the Lord. And I would document everything, and he would just continue to reveal things to me. And that became, I still do it to this day. Every morning, I'm sitting at my desk right now, like I pull out a journal and I go through that, and I do the same thing on good days, bad days, all the days. And it just helps you keep the right things in perspective, because you're not allowing anything else to control you. And it is allowing for God to enter in, but it creates this beautiful space for your healing. And it is so unbelievably necessary, because your mind is where all the transactions take place. And whatever thought you partner with is the direction that your life is going to go in. And so that is really how these were birthed. And I treasure every bit of it because it is something that I couldn't have come up with on my own. I can promise you that.
Words are so powerful. When I lost my son, I was going through really, really, really difficult time. And during therapy, they had suggested doing journaling. Now, I had journaled when I was younger. And if you
Mhm.
go back and read the journals when you're younger, what I did most of the time during those journals wasn't, well, I was younger too, but it was ask for things that I wanted. And so when I go back and I read those journals, it wasn't about a healing process. It's about what can you give me? It was all
Right.
about what could you give me? So now, when I do, I use that time to release things that I need to release and take in things that I need to take in, as opposed to saying, "Oh, this is my wish list for things that I would like to have, please." So I am a firm believer in journaling, and I thank you very much for doing something like this. And when I was reading, this particular journal is a gift for somebody else, but when I was reading through the journal, there's little excerpts that are written, and I thank you very much, because I know that you prayed over this too, which makes
Mhm.
me really happy for the person that's going to receive this. But I love at the end that you talked about being crowned, and so everyone, it presumes that Diary of a Queen is because I'm a pageant gal, and that people that are on are all pageant related, which is completely not the case. The reason for being crowned is a state of being. It is how you feel about yourself, your existence in this world, that you're important, that you're loved, all of those things. And I love at the end, you know, and I'm going to read a little bit of this because I
Yeah.
think it's so great, that you're crowned with beauty, and you're crowned with intelligence, crowned with kindness, talents, grace, love, purpose, and you're crowned with a destiny that only you can fulfill. And I love that, because it's no mistake that I have you on today. And it's, no mistake that we have stayed connected for years and years. And when I read something like that, I thought that's it, right? That's the whole reason for me wanting to do this podcast, is to let people know that they are divinely crowned, and that they have a place in this world that is so
Mhm.
extraordinarily special. So I thank you very much. I'm getting choked up. I thank you very much for putting that in there, because it spoke to me so highly. Because I realize in this world, like you said, I'm a small part of this world. If there's anything that I can do to make other people know that they're uniquely and purposefully and specially made, that's what I want out of life. That's it. That journal of wish lists of things that I want doesn't seem quite as important anymore.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so moving forward, we have we have a adult version, a woman's version, and we have a teen version. Is there anything else in the works as far as these journals go?
There are so many that I need to sit down and work on. There's one I'm in the middle of working on right now, and it is called Perception versus Reality. And it is the misconceptions that I had about Jesus, about God, and it goes a lot deeper into really the different encounters that I've had, and what that looks like, and what I thought versus what God really said about it. Because, you know, again, I've had so many friends and people from church and friends that could be my mom's age. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing that you had this encounter with the Lord." And like I said, I wish I could have that. And I'm like, "But you can." And so I felt compelled. And again, it's the timing of that is not quite ready yet. Um, but to really pour into that. And I want to pull out some of my past journals and make sure that I'm gathering the right things for this particular one, so that that one can be released, where people, these excerpts that are in the current journals are one pagers. These excerpts in the next one are 3 to 4 to 5. I mean, it's just however long they need to be, with a few places to journal in between, to really take people on that type of journey. So that's the next installment, and it is a to be determined release date.
Well, I appreciate all that you're doing and all the things that you're putting out into the world. Of course, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on the podcast today. At the end of every podcast, I love for our guests to give one piece of advice. And that advice could be to women, it could be to people in general, it could be about work, family, love, whatever you want it to be, whatever your is spoken to your heart at that time. So if you had to give one piece of advice to anybody that's listening, what would that piece of advice be?
I think you have to be very conscientious about what you're listening to and what you're allowing to pour into your mind. When I talked about the mind is such an interesting place and you get to decide what thoughts you partner with, I'll never forget, because I used to like rip myself to shreds. You stand in front of the mirror and you're like, oh, I don't like the way this looks. I don't like the way that looks. And I remember it was, I mean, my daughter must have been 2 at the time, and I was in phenomenal shape. And I was standing in the bathroom getting ready, and even being 30 pounds less than I am now, was just tearing myself apart. And I stopped and I went, what am I doing? I'm really smart. I'm a smart, capable, beautiful woman. Why am I always cutting myself down? And that's when I realized that the enemy comes in, it comes in very sneakily to try to pull you away from who God has created you to be. And so capturing those thoughts and capturing those emotions, it is one of the most vital things you can do for your mental health, because there are always going to be things coming at you. And our insecurities are birthed out of the pain and the things that we have gone through. And so I'm not saying that I'm perfect, I don't struggle with it. Everybody does. You are human. But if you can at least start to recognize, then you will know, and you will be equipped with the right tools to go, I don't have to think that about myself, because I know I'm amazing and I know I'm smart. No good, smart, intelligent woman is going to stand there and do that. Why am I doing that? And so, for the people that are watching, you are smart, you are beautiful, you are capable, and you do not have to partner with any thought that comes against any of those truths about yourself.
I couldn't agree more. Life is about holding on to people and words that bring us joy. The more joyful that we are, the more joy that we put out into the world. And I would say today's day and age, that is something that is lacking. And if we can do it as much as possible, we certainly should. Chelsea, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on. Love watching your family grow. Love watching your faith grow. I have a feeling we're going to see quite a few more things coming out of you. And I'm very excited to see all that stuff. And of course, I'm going to put links to where we can find Authentically Loved, so that people can be able to get that for themselves and be able to use and start journaling, because it really is a great tool. For everybody that is watching, give us a like. It really does help us know what kind of content we need to be putting out there, so that we can connect with as many women as we possibly can, from North Carolina to the entire country to all over the world. And we have viewers that are now connecting to us from Korea. We had some from Australia. And it's amazing what we can do when we all band together. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. It really does help you to be able to get notifications. We try to put out videos as often as possible. Sometimes the videos are things that are kind of give you a 1-2 punch. Sometimes they're just fun and uplifting, but they're always something that is done from the heart and meant to be able to connect us all together, just like women should be doing, uplifting and empowering each other. With that being said, Chelsea, thank you so much. And this has been Diary of a Queen.